Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves from just outside lovely Louisville, Kentucky, and in Maryland, John Webster, the inimitable, the incomparable John Webster. How you doing, Big John?
Hey, Gary, doing real good, man. Another great week in sports. I think we got a little football game coming on this week that we'll talk about. And we would be remiss if we didn't say hello to the man that makes it all happen. What's going on, John Pitt?
Hey, guys, what's going on? I guess it's official. The Bengals finally made it to L.A. Did they really want to play this game? What's going on with that? It's Tuesday.
Well, that's not totally unusual. Some teams, get in Monday night. Of course, we're talking about the Bengals. They probably, it took a lot of work to book a lot of Greyhound buses to go out to the West Coast. If you know Mike Brown, like most folks do. They are the team that I don't want to say they define shoestring budget because they got money. They just don't spend it. And there was a story I posted on Facebook from Deadspin that, talked about how, they might be in LA, but don't expect the Bengals to pick up a check.
Gary, I think you're being very hard on the Bengals.
Well, yeah, I am because, Paul Brown, John, we know Paul Brown was not like that when he built the franchise. He was not like that when he owned the Cleveland Browns. Then again, maybe he was because, again, you're talking about starting a team from scratch in a city, downstate from where you made your legend. And Cincinnati is not the same in some respects as Cleveland. Cincinnati, I've known this since I was a kid, and I know it now. Being out this way, it's still considered a baseball town. It is a Cincinnati Reds town, and somehow they got a great stadium. They're still the only NFL team that I know that doesn't have an indoor practice facility. All you need to know about the Bengals. They had to practice in the snow last week at the University of Cincinnati, which has an indoor facility. You heard what I said. An NFL team practicing at a college facility because they don't have an indoor facility. That shouldn't happen.
So many.
I like the Bengals' chances, but we'll get into that in a second.
So many things I could say right there, but I'm going to take the high road.
Hey, I'm just the messenger. I'm not really, trying to throw dirt on them, but it's just for all the talk that Dan Snyder gets about Washington, he at least has an indoor practice facility for them. That's all I'm saying. But, a friend of mine, when I posted that Deadspin story, he said that the Cincinnati Bengals are like the Evanses of the NFL. And I was like, ooh, that's really cold. When you had to pull out a Good Times reference and everything, that pretty much says everything about, just how poor this franchise is, or maybe how frugal. I don't want to say cheap. I'm just going to say frugal. But anyway, let's get into Super Bowl 56. John, I think we have a really one of the best pure matchups that you can get in the Super Bowl. You're talking about two teams that are so closely matched statistically. If you look at the rankings, no more than maybe 2 or 3 spots separate them in any statistical category, offensively and defensively. The records might not be the same, but these are two teams that pretty much are balanced, in and of themselves, and balanced, in terms of facing each other. Would you agree?
Very evenly matched game, Gary. I think it's going to be an exciting game. Cincinnati is a team that finds a way each and every week. The Rams, they have pushed all the chips into the middle of the table. They're all in. bringing in Odell Beckham, bringing in Von Miller, bringing in Matt Stafford. They're all in. Sony Michel. They're all in. I think the difference in this game will be interior line play. And I think Cincinnati, they've had 2 weeks. They need to come up with a plan and a scheme for their line to be able to safely protect Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, as we said last week, has been sacked over 50 times this year. I'm not sure they can pull it off. I think it'll be a good game, but I think the Rams win. And I think the telling story in the game will be the interior line play. The last time that guy named Von Miller was in a Super Bowl, he went crazy and had one of the best Super Bowls ever. You remember? I mean, they played against the Carolina Panthers, and basically he was wearing Cam Newton's jersey all day long. He was in the backfield so much. I think Von Miller is going to have another one of these games like this again. I think it's hard. It's hard. Did I say hard, Gary? It's hard.
Hard.
It's very hard to put up a plan to block Aaron Donald on one side and Von Miller on the other. Now, I want you to close your eyes, Gary, and pretend you're Joe Burrow, and you have those two looking at you every play. Tell me which. Yeah, I mean that's rough. That's rough, and that's why I say I'm going with the Rams. I'm not even leaning towards the Rams. I'm going with the Rams. A good game, but the Rams will win, and I think they'll win because of the interior line play.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just going to go with the Bengals just because, just to be contrary. But I agree with you that interior line play is going to be the big difference. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to ask you, John, do you remember a certain front four for the Rams way back in the day called the Fearsome Foursome?
Do I?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think how many of those guys went into the Hall of Fame.
Deacon Jones is in the Hall of Fame. Merlin Olsen. Fame. Rosie Greer, I think. Not sure about Rosie Greer. And the other one was Roger Brown, I think.
Yeah, Roger Brown. Yeah.
So 2 of them for sure. I'm not sure about Rosie Greer. I'm not sure about Roger Brown. But that Fearsome Foursome, this is Fearsome Foursome Part 2 with what they have. They're scary. I mean, they are scary. And I'll give Joe Burrow credit. Every time he's going to get sacked on Sunday, he's going to get right back up and keep playing. I give him all the credit in the world. That
was the point I was going to make. And that's the thing, a guy that gets sacked that many times, you figure he would be gun shy, especially after having a major knee injury. Joe Burrow is not that guy. He's got a swagger about him. I think he's one of those guys. He reminds me a little bit of Rocky in that, you knock him down, he go up and say, hey, you're not so bad. Thing, right? The problem is those hits are going to take a toll, especially against a front four like that. And I figure if you're Cincinnati, you probably already got a game plan where you've built in 4 or 5 sacks. If they can keep it under 6 sacks, I think they've got a chance. But that's a lot to ask for against that front four. I mean, again, you're talking about Miller, you're talking about Donald. I mean, that's going to be really, really tough. Now, if they can keep him upright long enough and he can complete some passes, I think he can go against that secondary. I really do.
The weakest part of that defense is their secondary for the Rams. I'm not really impressed with the secondary. Jalen Ramsey is already requesting that he be able to cover what's the guy? Jamar Chase. He's already
Jamar Chase, yeah.
That he can cover him one-on-one. No,
yeah. I saw that and I just had to laugh. It's like, you better get some help over there, covering that guy, because who do they have? If you don't do that, you still have to account for Joe Mixon. Yeah, I mean, you've got to account for their tight ends. They're slot guys. I mean, that's a lot. What is that? Locker room talk. That's bulletin board talk. Jamar Chase is a bad man. and you better figure out a way to neutralize him, with double coverage, if not every single play.
I definitely would. He's a difference maker, and he's definitely somebody that can stretch the field.
Yeah. I keep thinking it's like, in Super Bowls, John, it's not just about the stars. It's about those unsung players, those role players, depending on what happens with Uzoma, and his availability. But I look at Cincinnati and I'm thinking T. Higgins. I'm thinking, Tyler Boyd. And of course, Joe Burrow is not afraid to run either if he can't pass. So there are a lot of things, you can't underestimate the Bengals at all. Now, having said that, on the other side of the ball, Matthew Stafford, this is his moment. He's coming off 300-yard games. His last two games been over 300 yards. In the playoffs, he's completed 72% of his passes. That's a guy who has been building his whole career for this. I mean, he's with a team with great talent around him, with no offense to Calvin Johnson. But let's face it, he's gotten something out of Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, that he seems like a new man. That offense is clicking. This is his moment. As much as I'm going to go for the Bengals, because we can't have two of us picking the Rams. We got to have a little conflict, and one of us will be right. You're doing pretty good against me so far, Anyway, but the thing about this is that it's root for Matthew Stafford because he's a guy that just toiled for all those years in Detroit. They just could not go real far. And, now he's with a team and he's showing what he can do with a totally good team around him, a totally good offense, not just a couple of guys.
Hopefully this will work out for Stafford. He's moved back. He's with the Rams. I think he's got a place out in Malibu Beach, or he's from Malibu Beach, and they're getting ready to play the Super Bowl in the Rams' new home. This is a made for TV ending. And I think it's going to work out for the Rams. I think they will defeat the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind about this game, though, John, they are playing at home, but they're not going to be playing in front of a home crowd. If you've ever been to a Super Bowl, and I'm assuming that you probably have, being the Patriots fan that you are, and, just having that stockpile of money in your basement and everything, like Scrooge McDuck, but that's a neutral crowd. I mean, it might be a home game, but in a sense, it's a neutral crowd because, the Super Bowl basically is a big money reward for all the sponsors, for players. You don't see too many home fans at a game like that. I don't see Cincinnati being fazed by being on the road right now. I mean, when you go into Kansas City, one of the loudest places that you can play, and you win, even after being 18 points down. I mean, SoFi Stadium might not faze you at all. If anything, they might have to get over the fact, hey, we're playing in a pretty nice stadium. Wow, this is a great place. But they're not going to be fazed by the crowd at all. Again, they've won their last two playoff games on the road against the top seed and a tough place to play, and then against a two-time defending conference champion on their home field. So, again, they're playing with house money. And the big thing about the Bengals is they weren't supposed to be here in a sense, but they matured quickly, even after a couple of bad losses. Remember that Jets loss?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
And we were wondering how in the world were we building them up to even win the division? But, they persevered. They're very, very resilient. And they're, what's important, they're playing their best football at the most important time of the year. And again, I think it's going to be a good game. I understand why you would pick the Rams, because I mean, a lot of things favor Rams, but John, you can't underestimate heart. And I feel like that's what the Bengals have, and that's what's That's what's going to help them on Sunday. That and keeping Joe Burrow upright.
We will see, Gary. We will see.
Yep. Okay, let's see. What else are we gonna talk about here today? Oh yeah, college basketball. Whew. Oh, wait a minute. No, before we get to that, let's talk about some of these head coaching vacancies. Lovie Smith, new coach down at Houston. What do you think about that one, John?
Good hire. He was the associate head coach. I don't think Cully should have gotten fired. I give Houston credit for working inside and also for being able to hire a minority who was the best candidate for the job. He's still got a lot of work to do. It's not a quarterback, really. Deshaun Watson's not staying there. They're going to trade him. It just comes down to when they will trade him. So Lovie will be starting over, but Lovie is a defensive coach. He'll be able to build upon the defense that they have there. And I think he'll be able to continue the building blocks that Cully put in place. So I think it's a good hire.
Yeah, I think the thing with any coach, but I'm going to say this in terms of African American coaches in the NFL, is how many resources they're going to have at their disposal to try to succeed, and how much support. I think Lovie can do it. I mean, bear in mind, he took the Chicago Bears to a Super Bowl with Rex Grossman at quarterback. Chew on that for a few. When you think about it, and that's the last Super Bowl that they've come close to sniffing.
Well, he has gotten there, and yes, he had one Rex Grossman as his quarterback, and they got there. That's all I'll say, Gary. They were able to get there. Lovie Smith has been successful in Chicago. I think he'll be successful with Houston. He had a modicum of success with Illinois in college football, but let's be honest, who is going to win a lot of games at University of Illinois in football? That's a basketball school, and they really don't put a lot of emphasis, in my opinion, on the football program. So I think, like I said, this is a good hire for the Houston Texans, and I'm wishing and I'm hoping that Lovie Smith has a lot of success.
Yeah. Now going across the country to Miami with Mike McDaniel going to the Miami Dolphins. I guess hiring the offensive coordinator from the San Francisco 49ers makes sense, given their success, even with your boy Jimmy G, who, I know that you just love him so much, John. But I'm not sure what kind of situation he's going into, because the whole firing with Brian Flores and what he came out with, the bombshell he came out with last week about, being paid to tank games and everything else. And again, you're talking about firing a coach who had consecutive winning seasons with really a piecemeal roster. I mean, he's had some talent, but my God, he got the most out of the least of any coach I've seen in recent years. It's going to be interesting to see what McDaniel has. Is he going to be, told to not play his best, or to tell a team to not play their best and try to get a top draft pick? Is he going to be given the resources that Brian Flores didn't have, that he overcame not having to win? That's what's going to be interesting. And I think it's going to be very, very telling if they do get to the playoffs, and it's going to invite a whole lot of questions about that front office, as it should.
Well, maybe I'm missing it, but I think one of the first questions that has to be asked and answered: is he going with Tua as his quarterback, or are you looking for another quarterback in the draft? I think that's the first thing that has to, or in free agency, however you want to look at it. I think that's one of the first things they have to look at. I don't think that's really a well-oiled machine there as far as being a well-run organization. Obviously, with what Brian Flores brought out last week, there's some questions about what goes on there. I think McDaniel can do good. Let me also say this. Mike McDaniel, that's another one that got out of Washington's headquarters. He was also on the staff there. There's another one gone. Whew. But anyway, I think he'll do all right. I think one of the things, if he goes with Tua, I think he'll be able to help him and cover up some of his deficiencies or shortcomings with the type of run offense he'll have. San Francisco was a very run-heavy team, as you saw. They didn't do a lot of passing. And when they did, it was a lot of short passing, which San Francisco is known for, going back to Bill Walsh with like the extended handoff with like the little dropout pass, the little down and outs, But it's a rough situation he's going to, Gary. Make no mistake about it. I hope he does all right, but that's a rough situation.
Yeah, it's funny. Tua is always going to be the wild card X factor, in any discussion about the Dolphins. I mean, he has shown some flashes of his potential, and then he's looked bad some other times. And I think a lot of it has to do with his health. The thing is with him now, he's got another coach that he's got to learn that system from. Now it's an offensive coach, and I think that can help him. But you've got to decide at what point do you, fish or cut bait with him? Do you look to the draft now, and try to build, or do you try to get maybe one more season or try to get a few games out of him, see what happens before you just say, okay, this isn't working, we're going to go in another direction, whether it's through the draft, for his backup, or like you said about free agency. They've got to figure out what happens if he just falls off the table, falls off the map again, or if you can really ride his arm and whatever health he has and try to get as much out of him as you can.
Well, it's like I said, you got to figure out what you want to do with Tua. I'm not sure that they even know, and that's not the most sound organization to be with right now, Gary. I can't put it any other way. It's.
Oh, you're right.
It's.
All right. Well, let's just move on to college basketball, which we love talking about here in Kentucky, and which you love talking about probably any other time of the year. All right. Auburn just does not look beatable right now. Although before we went on the air, you gave your prediction about tonight's game against Arkansas, and I think you make a lot of good points. Right now, the SEC looks like it's a two-team race between Auburn and Kentucky. The thing about Kentucky, as good as they've looked, even though they destroyed Kansas, almost 2 weeks ago, going to South Carolina tonight, that's not an easy game. That is not a given game, a given for them, because you got to like what Frank Martin has gotten out of his team. And the thing is, when you host Kentucky, when you face Kentucky, but especially when you host Kentucky, Calipari says it all the time, that's their Super Bowl. And again, and any team can beat them like that. LSU did it. LSU happens to be a decent team. Auburn, you saw what Auburn did. But South Carolina is just that gritty team. They seem like another, typical Frank Martin team that, they're going to hit them in the mouth. If Kentucky wins tonight, they're going to have to, wipe the blood from their nose and from their mouth and everything and come back. And as we saw Vanderbilt do, as I saw Vanderbilt do last week, they tried to rough it up with them, and they got Kentucky frustrated a little bit. And I think they offered a blueprint on how you can try to limit Kentucky, because that game was a lot closer than it should have been. And basically because they were physical with Kentucky. Kentucky didn't back down, but if you can try to get Oscar Tshiebwe off his game, by frustrating him a little bit. He got called for 2 flagrants, which we haven't seen. I mean, he's not a, what I quote, nice, soft guy or anything by any stretch, but, he got a little frustrated by some of the pressure, because they put tanks on him. And I could see South Carolina doing the same thing. But I'll let you talk about Auburn, since I've talked enough about the Wildcats.
Well, let me just say this about Kentucky. It's a rough place to go into tonight playing in South Carolina. I think they'll come out with a win. You're very true. What about Frank Martin? Teams most of the time are a reflection of their coach. He's an old school guy, rolls up his sleeves each and every day, and he goes for it. And that's how South Carolina's going to play Kentucky tonight. I think Kentucky will come out with a hard-fought win tonight. On to Auburn and Arkansas. I have started really enjoying Arkansas. I've always enjoyed Bruce Pearl. I think he's a very good coach. He did a great job at Tennessee. Near the end, he ran into some challenges and he had to move on, and that's why he's at Auburn now. But at each stop he's been at, his team's been very successful, Gary. And he's done something this year that's never been done in Auburn history. They are the number one ranked team in the country right now. Auburn has never been number one ranked, not with Charles Barkley, not with Chuck Person, never been a number one ranked team. But being number one also means you are the hunted and you are not hunting. They had a tough game this past Saturday. They went to Georgia. They got out of Georgia with the skin of their teeth. They won 74-72. And for the most of the second half, they were losing, but they were able to pull it out. They gutted it out. Tonight, they play Arkansas at Arkansas. Arkansas, I think it's like 13-1 at home. Arkansas is going to play the same type of basketball that Auburn plays. It's going to be 94 feet of hell both ways. And they're going to run and play defense and press each other. I think Arkansas will get them tonight. I'm not saying that I want Auburn to lose, but I'm just telling you I think Arkansas is going to get them. It's tough. You just had a rough one against Georgia on Saturday. Now what we got? Sunday, Monday, 3 days later, you're in Arkansas. And now you're playing there, and that's not an easy place to play at, Gary. You know that better than I do. And they have to find a way to dig deep and pull it out again. I don't think they can do it. I don't think they can do it.
Yeah. Now, I like Auburn's chances because I think, again, by all means, they by all rights, they probably should have lost to Georgia. But they came away. They got past their hard game. That what do they call it? They got past their trap game. I think they can breathe and get back to what they're doing at against Arkansas. But that's one of those things. That's like coaches talk about. It's not about them. It's about us. Arkansas. I don't think Arkansas has played its best game. They're going to have to pull that one out tonight, and they might have that kind of performance tonight. But Auburn, I think, is really finding out a lot about itself. Since they've been number one. I mean, beating Kentucky was that was a breakthrough for them. It's why they're number one. And I think having weathered that kind of challenge against Georgia as the hunted, I think that's something that helps them in a game like this. And I don't really see too many changes happening atop the SEC or the rankings, at least not until the weekend. But again, the thing about this time of year, a lot of these teams have these backloaded schedules. I mean, look at the ACC and Duke. Duke probably thought they had a walkover against a Virginia team in transition. Virginia's a 500 squad, and they had to basically play from behind that whole game. And almost, and then they got a decent lead on them, and then they lost it, and then they lost on that last second 3-pointer. That's the problem sometimes when you are the top dog. I mean, everybody is coming for you. It's their Super Bowl, and in Virginia's case, they won a Super Bowl on the road last night.
Yeah, that was a big win for them. That was a big win. Duke just couldn't finish it last night. They couldn't finish. They did get in the hole in the first half. They were down by 10 in the first half. They cut it at halftime, but they just could not just put Virginia away. And Virginia plays that style of ball that's very patient. They're going to use 25 to 28 seconds every time on that shot clock. And they play pesky defense. I mean, Tony Bennett does a great job with them. And, they're a lot, in my opinion, I think they're a lot better than that 14-9 record indicates. And it's also, you and I talked about it, Gary, the ACC is not a really strong conference this year. Really, the best team in the ACC is Duke. And then after that, you have some other teams that are there, but there's no one like Duke. I mean, they are the class of the ACC. The ACC will probably get, I can't see them getting their 8 or 9 in there like they've done in the past.
No.
Maybe 3 or 4. And really, right now, I can justify just one. I told you, I looked at the projected selections last week. Notre Dame was in second place in the ACC and was the last team in for projected selections for the NCAA tournament. Now, that's the second place team in the ACC. That tells you how. At
the time, now remember, they're tied for first atop the ACC after Duke's loss.
Yeah, they're tied for first, and they're still the last team in the tournament.
Yeah, but
that's rough.
Yeah. It's I don't know what to make of the ACC right now. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen the conference as a whole as down as it is right now. But again, that I think COVID and a lot of these transfer changing transfer rules really changed a lot of things for a lot of teams in conferences. Like, I don't see a dominant team right now in college basketball. It's just, whoever is number one, I think it's a 3-week cycle, 3 or 4 week cycle about who's the best at that time. Of course, the tournament's coming up, that's going to determine, who really is the strongest team. And it wouldn't surprise me if Auburn was the top overall seed, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, it'll be interesting because also you have a Purdue team that's really good this year. You got an Arizona team that's really good this year. And out there in the Pac-12, they've been knocking each other off back and forth. UCLA just lost to Arizona State this weekend. And it's very even, like I said. And don't forget about Gonzaga. They're sitting out there. And I think it's going to be a real evenly matched battle. Also, Kansas is out there. They're controlling the Big 12 as always. And then you until you knock off the champion, you're not the champion. So Baylor's still sitting out there. You got to knock them off in order to win that championship. I think they'll definitely get into the NCAA tournament, and they're going to be.
They're a lot, man. I mean, they're ranked 10th, so I mean, they're in the field.
They're going to be difficult to play. They're tough, So this is going to be a lot of fun this year. I know people like picking the games and trying to figure out who's going to win. John Pitt. But this is going to be really a very evenly matched NCAA tournament this year. And you're going to have some upsets, and then you're also going to have some very heated games.
Yeah. Hey, John, we still have some time to talk about the NBA. We're approaching the trade deadline. But first, let's talk about the Phoenix Suns. They tilted. I mean, they are still as good as they were last year. I mean, or playing as well as they did last year. After that slow start to the season, they've been rolling, and they haven't slowed down since then. Is it too early to think that they might be the team to beat in that conference, if not in the league?
It's not too early, but you still got a lot of basketball to play, Gary. Without a doubt, they are one of the best teams there. You still want to see Golden State with all their players at one time. Draymond Green is probably not going to be back for another 2 or 3 weeks. That really hurts Golden State. He plays a critical role for their success. The kid Wiseman has not come back yet, so you don't know if he's going to play or not. And I'm one of the few people. I'm not saying they're going to win anything, but I think they will make things difficult for people. I think the Lakers can still get their act together. I really do. I think Westbrook has always been a second half of the season player. When I say second half of the season, Dante reminded me, my son, that they've already played 50 games. So what's the second half of the season, Pops? Well, let me be clear. After the All-Star break, Westbrook, I think, will be playing better. I don't think the Lakers will win a championship, but I think they will be able to play better and make a difference in these Western Conference playoffs. It still comes down to, in my opinion, Gary, it still comes down to Phoenix and it comes down to Golden State. Those are the two best teams in the Western Conference as far as I'm concerned. You got a young Memphis team that's coming up and they're going to be tough, but I don't think this is their year. And Utah's still there, but I think they're going to fall short. That Eastern side, whew, wow, I tell you, what you got? You got Miami and Chicago in first place in the East in the NBA. I mean, that's and Brooklyn is sitting on an 8-game losing streak. 8-game losing streak. And they're talking about trading Harden, possibly. So that's trading Harden. And get this tonight, Gary. This is the situation that Brooklyn's in tonight. 8-game losing streak. You come back home. You're playing the Celtics. You don't have Kevin Durant. You don't have James Harden. And oh, by the way, you don't have Kyrie Irving because he's not eligible to play because of the vaccination guidelines that they have in New York. So they're coming back home. When you think you're going to come home for some home cooking to get better, they're still going to be in a rough situation. So we'll see how it's going to work out. I mean, they have a hard decision to make. Do you keep James Harden for the rest of the season or do you trade him? Now, the trade rumor that I'm hearing right now is Harden to Philly, Ben Simmons to Brooklyn. If that trade happens, the first thing everybody's going to say is Brooklyn has just become that much ahead of the game again. They are favored to win. But I'll tell you this, when you go and you lose 8 straight games and you got your best player with a knee injury, he's been out and probably won't be back for another 2 weeks, another player who can't play for whatever reason, and you traded your third wheel, you're in a tailspin. And, buddy, if you can't find a way to stop that tailspin, before you look, you could be sitting around looking and finding yourself playing in a playing game.
Yeah. As for all the criticism of Harden and it's, his seemingly, selfish, me first approach to the game, if Brooklyn can stick it out a little bit longer and not trade him, I think that gives them the best shot. And for Ben Simmons, would you really take a chance at this point in the season on a head case? You don't need somebody to turn you around. I think you need to figure it out. In fact, I want to say, I saw a story where the Nets aren't even hearing anything about what the Sixers want, from them in terms of what they're offering for Harden. So I'm not even sure if that deal is even, credible. I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot of movement at the trade deadline. There's been a lot of talk about what the Lakers might do. There's been talk about what the Knicks might do. But I have a feeling that some teams are really just going to try to stand pat at this point. Like if it's a team that that's on the outside looking in, and they feel like that, maybe they can make a trade to kind of move them up. Yeah, but for these teams that are say right on the cusp, I think that you just try to ride it out. And, since we're talking about teams like that, let's talk about Washington. I mean, like you mentioned to me about Bradley Beal having season-ending wrist surgery. That's a team that, they need talent in a major way now because their biggest player, their main player is done for the rest of the season. They're only 5 games under 500, 4 or 5 games under 500, but now they're in danger of falling, far off the pace. They might have to do something just to fill the void right now.
Well, I think with the Wizards, I think what with Beal having season-ending surgery, I think they're pretty much I shouldn't say it like this, and it sounds terrible, but I think they're packing in until next year. I think they're not really, I don't think they're trying to make a run. There's a couple other things that happened today with teams that I think are looking forward to next year. CJ McCollum got traded to the Pelicans today from the Portland Trail Blazers. I think with that happening, and I can't remember who else. Well, they also traded Norman Powell out of Portland too. I think Portland now is starting to think about the future. And the other thing I would have to ask them is, you have Damian Lillard there. Is he going to be open to a rebuild, or are you going to have to move him out and do a total rebuild? Sabonis with Indiana Pacers. He got traded today to Sacramento. Sacramento has been and will continue to be a team that is a bunch of underachievers. They aren't doing anything. So Sabonis going there. Indiana, I don't know if they're clocking it in and just saying this is it. We just have to see. But that's some of the things that happen. But I'll tell you what, Gary, even if nothing happens, leading up to this Thursday, which is the trade deadline, it will be exciting because there's all sorts of speculation and rumors out there.
Yeah. The team that intrigues me the most really is the New York Knicks, because, I've read a couple of threads and I was kind of surprised by how many people seem to want Julius Randle out of New York. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, without him, I mean, I don't even know if we're having a discussion about them, even being close to the playoffs. What am I missing, John?
The best player you got. I mean, the thing with New York, they won't go for a rebuild. So they need to figure out how you build around Randall. And maybe what you have to look at is, if you don't build around Randall, maybe you're looking at how you trade him for somebody else that's just as good as him and try to do it that way. But he's the best player the Knicks have. I would try to find some other things to go around. That's just me.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about a rebuild. It's like the Knicks have been a rebuilding team for 30 years. And, I mean, you get to the playoffs last year. Yeah, you're struggling right now. But that just sounds like a panic move driven of talk radio and social media. And it really kind of threw me off because, again, I'm thinking, Julius Randle is the best thing you've got, and you're trying to get rid of him for a bunch of spare parts, for a can of beans. I just don't get it. And as I say, maybe I'm just missing something, but
we will see. Like I said, leading up to this Thursday, exciting.
Yeah. Well, I can't think of anything more that we can talk about, but I guess as we close, John, give me a score for Sunday. You've got the Rams, I've got the Bengals. I'll give you my score. I've got Bengals 24, Rams 17.
Rams 27-17.
And there you have it. All right, folks, stock up on food, eat up on Sunday, enjoy the Super Bowl. I hope it's a competitive game. I hope it's everything that we've discussed it possibly being. We will see you next week with a whole bunch to talk about. I don't know, John, if we're going to talk about the Winter Olympics, because that's something that's a little out of my realm right now. I couldn't tell you anything about a team or an athlete anywhere, and definitely not figure skating. But, hey, we've got a week to prepare, so who knows? Maybe we will talk about a little winter sports.
Hey, you all, have a great week. Enjoy yourselves. Watch a lot of sports again. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Get all that food early so you can just sit on that couch and watch an exciting game and watch some good sports. Oh, and Gary, go Auburn.
And you picked Arkansas tonight, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you picked Arkansas. All right. Take care, folks. And John Pitt, thank you so much for being a traffic cop. Thank you for not putting rabbit ears on us and, in the background. See you next week, bro.
Take care.